Okay, rulers, settle down. Ruler School is brought to you by Odyssey Games, where you can go to get singles for all your Force of Will and other trading card games, as well as these amazing patrons. Special thanks to guest lecturer member Vite Ramen. Thank you for your support. Class is in session.
Hey there, rulers. Welcome back to the Tournament Report with yours truly, Paul Reisman. And today, we are going to be taking a look at the recent two GPs that we've had right before the 7th format starts. If you're a little confused by what I just said, the 7th is the latest set that we are going to be getting from Force of Will and Saga Cluster, and it's sure to shake up the format. But before we do that, we need to see what format is being shaken up. So first, we're going to be taking a look at the Madrid GP. And the reason I'm giving you this first is because you're going to see a pretty stark difference in meta combination than what we had before. So, of course, we're looking first at the Madrid Spain GP information that is hosted on FOW Library. Shoutouts to Denius, friend of the channel, for compiling all this information and keeping it on his website. That's FOW Library.com. Check them out. They're super great. And we'll just get into the breakdown today for what this tournament looked like. So for this GP, I can't tell exactly how many players there were, but it looks like there was close somewhere between 30 and 40 players. The most players that we had were on Violet with 11. You can kind of see it there. It's in red. So if you can't make it out, it's 11 Violet players. 10 players were on Feasting Mujdart, which is your basic Lycion combo control. We had 3 Olivias, 3 Ragnaroks, 2 Wolfgangs, and then 1-ofs for different combinations of rulers. Shoutouts to that 1-of Mikage. Someone was like, yeah, I'm going to go in and play Mikage. And then, of course, the 0 My List, which the only other person I know who's playing that combination is Paul Clute. So someone said, yeah, I want to play that list over... from what we had in the other GP. Someone, yeah, that's a good combination of rulers. It's kind of a fun deck, so maybe we'll feature it here on the channel sometime. But for the most part, this is your breakdown. So we have a huge number of Violets, actually more Violets than Feasting Mujdarts. But what you're going to see in this GP is that not only did Feasting Mujdart take the win, they also had the most top 8 decks. I think there was only 1 Violet in the top cut. So we need to look at this list because this deck is basically going to change significantly, if not completely disappear, with the introduction of several cards, which, you know, we can do an update video on that if y'all really want something like that. We can talk about the metagame. We might even talk about it in our office hours segment on Monday night. So check us out if you haven't checked that out. We've talked about that a lot. But if you need some sort of digest, let us know, and we'd be happy to do that. So, of course, you have Feasting Mujdart being piloted by Alejandro Velasco. Congratulations, by the way, for winning this tournament. What I'm most interested here is the deck is pretty much solved at this point. But what's really interesting is people are starting to key in on the battle comes to an end. This card is going to be format defining pretty soon, and the reason this card is so good even in this list is because Feasting can pay for the void cost, meaning you can play this on turn 2. So it's a really good card to just have access to. You basically say, I call Bahamut, or you call Turbulence, or you call Prisia, or you call Welser, Antimatic number 13. You can call whatever you need in order to get that out of the way so that you can just proceed to win the game. This is probably the most interesting tech, in my opinion, that's in this list. Although I would also say Intimidation, this really important 1-drop, no battle damage from Resonators for the turn. Really, really good card. We may or may not see this, depending. Remember, the format now is shifting more to a bias for 2-drop removal, 2-drop cancels, etc., as opposed to 1-drop things because of you know, the boy, Girion. This deck is going to change significantly, and I think what this deck is going to have to do is, if it's going to pivot, if it's going to survive, at all, what it needs to do is recognize that Prisia needs to be more utilitarian. It needs to grab 1-drops. It needs to grab other things off of playing Prisia the Resonator. Big Show is not going to be nearly as easy to get off, in my opinion. It's not like this deck is going to completely go away. I think this deck will still be in the meta and it will still be around, but to how much degree does it actually warp the format, we don't know. Although it does get things like Girion now, which is really interesting to me. That's another cancel it has access to. So who knows what this is going to look like. Comment down in the comment section down below if you're already brewing with this and trying to figure out, like, is this the deck you're going to go forward with? Just let us know. As we move on here, we're going to see, like, most of this is pretty much the same. This deck by Adrian Kano is using the Pulsing Thunder engine with Dollies, which I think is also like a really solid way of dealing with your opponent's board state. It also really helps you in the Wolfgang matchup to just get rid of all of their additions. Pretty much the same thing here, although people are playing I'm gonna say Jan Louise. I hope I'm not butchering your name, but they're playing Farisia's Journey, which is also another pretty common way of playing the deck. But pretty much everything is pretty much the same. You're either playing Institute, you're playing Dolly, you're playing other removal, you're playing other techs in the game. But for the most part, you're seeing a lot of these decks do not have the battle comes to an end. This deck does, from Sergio Valenzuela. I hope I said that right. I'm trying. They also played 2. Very solid card in general. This card's just fantastic. And then we get down to David Harrow's Violet list. So take a snapshot of this in your brain, because we're going to have to talk about Violet a lot today. So you're looking at a pretty standard list. 4 Tiny Violet, 3 Atomic Bahamut, a Healing Robot, your Heart to Hearts, and they're actually playing a couple of Suya. So this is looks like a black list for Violet. Black Violet is a variation of Violet that focuses more on playing things like Suya and some other things like Dark Alice's Smile from the sideboard. Did not mean to click on that, but here we are anyway. And there are some other things that you can do to just essentially remove things from your opponent's hand or from the field. Of course, you're going to notice, if you know where we're going with this, this was the first variation on Violet that we had. There is a second variation on Violet that we're going to be getting into, and so this is part of it. I'm really interested in why they played 0 in the sideboard. I'm wondering what that's about. The only reason is because I'm wondering if they just rely on Tiny Violet to get all of their atoms into the graveyard, and this just exists. I'm a little confused here. Maybe someone can let me know down in the comments. You should let me know. If you were in that tournament and you know what this is about, maybe I'm just not keying in on it. And then 7th and 8th place, again, just more Lycion shenanigans. Although Oscar Serrano did play a little bit of a different build, playing things like Morning Angel and opting to play Almerius over Feasting. And maybe that's just because they were worried about the number of Violet decks they were going to see. We've been really pushing Violet here in the United States, and talking about how Violet is an answer to some of the combo decks that we've been seeing. Spoiler alert, it works. By the way, this looks like it's just more of like a grind game where you're dumping with Mikage Rhea, and just doing a whole ton of other stuff to just make it so that your opponent has a really hard time. Basic control deck. We might even see more of this as time goes on. The potential there for this card to just have high utility, do some fun stuff, being able to slow the game down enough so you can get enough stones to have enough utility to play out against things like Belial and Astema decks. We might see more of this. It's certainly a really potent combination of rulers, so keep your eye on that for sure. That is the Madrid GP. Of course, I should probably mention the one Almerius Mujdar deck did make it to the top 8. So kudos to them for fighting against the odds to get there. now we're going to look at the Carta Magica GP that we had. It was all online. And of course, this is the ruler breakdown here. A lot of decks, a lot of Feasting Mooshstart. And second is Violet. I mean, this is a pretty standard breakdown. We had some Brad players. No Vlad. Vlad is not in the format. Misspoke a little bit. And then, of course, my favorite ruler, Olivia, also making an appearance. Did not make the top cut. Little sad about that. But we have 39 total for this GP. It was actually a relatively decent GP, and I think most people were just waiting for the new cards to come out, so we didn't see a huge turnout for this tournament. But 39 is still respectable. Like, you know, don't kid yourself. This is a decent turnout. And of course, our winner is Victora Rebholz. Looks like I did not put the names in this. I will fix that before we get too far. I hope I'm saying your name right, Victoria. My bad. If not, just let me know in Minnesota. We'll figure it out from there. But she won. So Victoria and Brandon Bremont crafted this deck together, and now they have invites to the World's GP, and they're a couple, Force of Will couple, cute. So what's going on here is they have reduced the number of tiny violets, and they have maxed out on Bahamut, and they've also, you know, gotten rid of the burning robot completely, and they've simply focused on getting as many atoms into the graveyard and finding Bahamut as fast as possible. So there was a player interview during the GP that happened right after Victoria won. And one of the things that they conceived of with this deck is, instead of trying to go over, which I interpret to be let them establish their board, let them get their stones, let me find my stuff, let me grind with them, and then wipe their board, and then, you know, destroy them with turbulence, etc. They decided to go faster and play Bahamut before they could do anything. Otherwise, they would be saying going under Feasting Mooshstart. So the idea here is not to recycle your atoms, but instead dump as many as possible, turbulence when it's convenient, and then Bahamut as fast as possible. The final games were done in 5 turns. And by 5, I mean like Victoria went, Cal went, Victoria went, Cal went, Victoria wins. That's just pretty much how all the games went. And this style of deck is no longer going to exist, mostly because we have new cards coming into the format like Belial and Astema and Girion, and the new Acheron card. I don't know if y'all have seen that, but the demonic world that taxes you for attacking is super good. It's amazing. Pretty much just eats this deck alive. So this deck, probably not viable. If you're looking to copy something like this, probably don't do it. But Violet actually won a GP. Proving, in my opinion, and most of our opinions, here at Ruler School anyway, that the Lechion decks weren't necessarily like all-encompassing. They weren't like Scheherazade level of ridiculous. Just more people felt comfortable playing a very consistent deck that had really good matchups across the board. It was a very consistent deck. It's not like it couldn't be beaten. Violet proved that. And with some ingenuity and some insight into the game, you can do this as well. But before I leave, I want to talk about the side deck, because again, we're seeing the battle comes to an end. This card is going to be meta warping again, because basically Carlina can play this on turn 1. Just rob your opponent of any of their win conditions. This card being in the meta more prominently from here on out, moving out of side decks and into main decks, that's going to change the dynamics that the format has. So you're going to have to diversify. If we think it's as prolific as it's going to be, you're going to need to diversify your main deck, because this deck automatically loses if you call Bahamut. You have to flip your Violet, and you know, if you get multiples of those in your hand and they use them, you lose things like your Eternal Wind, your Everfrost, your Turbulences, all of that stuff. So the deck becomes significantly harder to play once battle comes to an end, becomes more of a central card in the format. So just be aware, this deck is probably, and Victoria also admitted this deck is probably not going to be viable as we go forward, mostly just because of the way the format's changing. But I'm just really glad that not only one, we got a Violet win, we also got the first woman GP winner. So shout outs to Victoria. Super proud to be able to work with you here pretty soon. And just really good ingenuity on both you and Brandon's part for making this deck. So the next list is Kaltuma's list. This deck is a pretty standard Lycaon build. He opted to play Light of Raise and Revive to bring stuff back from the RFG. Things like Welser, pretty good. He's also playing the Sigurd package and the Dolly package. So he really wanted to get stuff onto the field, and this took him all the way to the top 2. Scorn of Dark Alice here. Really important card for the deck. Some sort of discard outlet, I think, for Feasting Mujdark decks at this point in time was super important, mostly because I got rid of your opponent's Bahamut's, or, you know, got rid of your opponent's Dollies, or your opponent's Pricias, their Never Ends, things like that, their Welsers including. So this card's super powerful. You could have opted to play Smile of Dark Alice in this spot, or of course Battle Comes to an End would have also been a really acceptable card to play. Congratulations to Cal for getting top 2. This is pretty much a very standard Lycaon list. Y'all have seen it before. We have another Violet in top 4, and I believe this is Kieran Lucas. Yeah, Kieran Lucas. I have a little list here to the side. Kieran Lucas also got top 4 with Violet. He's playing a much more standard Violet. Only a couple of Turbulence, as you can notice. Although he does... Oh, that's a Firestorm, excuse me. He plays 2 Firestorm in the sideboard just to burn the opponents out. He did not play 3 Kiki. Just be aware, Kiki here is a placeholder. In his picture of his final deck list, I can only make out 12 of his cards. So Kieran, if you're watching this and you want to tell us what those last 3 cards were, if you feel compelled to do that, please put them down in the comment section down below. He did not play 3 Kiki. Just be aware of that. He did not play 3 Kiki. But this is a pretty standard Violet list outside of what Victoria and Brandon crafted their list with. This is exactly how people have been playing Violet for a really long time, and even so, this deck was potent. It got the top 4. It's a deck worth respecting. And next we have Lon Loon. Gosh, I feel terrible. He's opting to play a little bit of a different package as well. He played a lot of Suyas. He played the one Valentina to snatch off of your Prisia, which is amazing. Of course, he's playing a couple of Dance of Spirits to silence your opponent. And then he's also playing the bunch of one-ofs, and I love this, right? He's playing the one Duet of Darkness, he's playing the one Valentina, he's playing the one Elixir's Love, which is super fun. Just get back one of your Curse of Ragnaroks from the grave. You can grab back a Cancel, a Melfi. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that you can grab off of this one card. Actually, don't quote me on the Melfi. I don't know if that works that way. But then he's also playing the one Schrodinger, which we haven't really seen prominently since the Rezard meta at the start of Saga Cluster. So playing the one Schrodinger to get all these different effects off is super fun. And then of course, he's got the 2 spirits on the top right there. This is a Welser card that just does ridiculous things, and he's opting to only play 2 Welsers in the main, siding the other 2. So this is just a super different, super creative deck list. I mean, it's got the same core of 20 cards, but it really just proves that the main deck was about 20 cards, and you could just mess with them however you wanted. 18 to 20 cards here are being represented. So yeah, congratulations to Neo. Next, we have another Violet list that made top 8. You're noticing here that they're playing Memory of Disappearance in the sideboard. And I think this is really interesting because if things... this is actually Derek Maguinez's list, by the way. You can tell by the Fiery Stone. It's Derek's list. Playing Memory of Disappearance to grab things from your RFG, like your atoms. That's really powerful stuff. Being able to reuse that stuff. It's just a little bit of utility against all of these different lists. So congratulations to Derek for once again piloting Violet very well and getting into the top 8. And here we have, I believe this is m.ha's Violet list. He's not playing Ragnarok, right? But he is doing some spicy stuff. So check this out. He's playing 1 Resistance and 1 Ouroboros because this deck draws like crazy due to Everfrost, Violet's Effect, Tiny Violet, etc. And he's maxed out on Heart to Heart Talk, Tiny Violet, Everfrost. He's gonna see this combination of cards. The idea there is to slap your opponent down to 2,000 life and then turbulence them. Right? Because you only need 2 atoms to burn them to death, right? For each copy. And of course, he's playing Last Secret Sword in the sideboard for just instant 10 damage. He's playing a 3rd Turbulence if he wants to go for the burn strategy. This is a good way of getting around Almerius. And then the last card we need to talk about is Death Scythe. Okay, so let's talk about Death Scythe. So Death Scythe effectively becomes a free discard. It removes stuff in your graveyard from game and comes back to your hand, so it's a free discard. You can remove all of the other atoms in your graveyard that you don't want anymore. You can put them back into the grave with Healing Robot. You can remove your Bahamut from game, play Memory Disappearance to get it back into hand. This card is just a really interesting tech choice. And then it just comes back to your hand. Card's interesting. I don't know. I'd never thought of that, so congratulations to m.ha for thinking about it. This is just fantastic. And of course, you can look at that sideboard too. It's a beautifully intricate, different sideboard. Awakening of Zero is never something I would have thought to put in for this list. I guess he was afraid of board wipes. I'm not entirely sure. But I'm not sure if it served him well or not, but it's there. And so it's interesting to me to mention that. Congratulations to m.ha for getting top 8. And then we're moving on to, I believe this is Stephen Holsheiser's list. And this is, again, very standard. He's obviously playing The Battle Comes to an End, a couple of copies of that. Intimidating the sideboard along with Almerius. It's a very standard list, but he's also playing the very spicy Valentina tech. Shoutouts to Stephen for getting top 8. And then our one Wolfgang that finally cracked into the top 8. I was so happy to see this because I think Wolfgang is one of those rulers that, you know, they had potential. They've always had potential to get into the top 8, but just with the presence of Violet forcing it out of the meta, I was waiting for somebody to pilot this deck and get into the top 8. And Roman Stark did that. So now we have to talk about Wolfgang for a little bit, because if you've never played against Wolfgang, you don't know what's happening. You do know that he's making Demonic Worlds, so you're typically going to grab your Oil Pond, and I tried to arrange these in such a way that it kind of give you a sense of what the progressive turns would look like for this list. You're either grabbing an Oil Pond or a Temple of the Dead, or, you know, depending if you go second or not, you're grabbing a Permafrost. These are some of the best Demonic Worlds that you can grab currently, although we just got some more in the 7th set. So the set of the 7th that just came out with a whole suite of new Demonic Worlds. I think we're going to see Wolfgang improve in general from those different utilities that he has now. Probably one of the best Demonic Worlds in this is Path of the Plains of the Raging Winds. Recovers all your stones based on the number of Demonic Worlds with different names you control. Very strong card. One of my favorite cards released. And it doesn't feel overpowered when you play it. It just feels like you're just ramping Demonic Worlds as opposed to stones. One of the best things to do with this is to play it, use Wolfgang's effect to get another Demonic World, so you're just ramping Demonic Worlds super fast. If you have extras in your hand, you can slap those down now because you have your will back. It's just really, really good. Of course, the best thing about this is if you have Residents and you banish Residents for their will, and you just have free stones to be able to get a Raging Winds, you can float will and have extra will for your turn. So this card is just super powerful, super good utility. We have the Forest, which does -X/-X for every Demonic World you control with a different name. So you can get to -6, -7 relatively easily. First layer of the Demonic World, it's basically ping your opponent for damage, gain that amount of health back. It's 400 per Demonic World that you control with a different name, so this card is a win condition in and of itself. You have the Scorching Mountain Path to just be able to pop anything you need. Amadeus to remove things from the game, so this thing gets around Eternal, which is really good. It also gets around Barrier because it doesn't target. And then you have Fallen Paradise of the Fallen Angels. This is another one of the win cons that we have in the deck. You flip Wolfgang, who counts as a demonic world. You grab this from your deck, and then you are able to get your Fallen Angel of Hatred, and you're able to get Terminus. And Terminus will get Swiftness from the Fallen Angel of Hatred. You'll swing in for game. If you rest your 3 demonic worlds, you can just end the game instantly right there. There's a couple of heart-to-heart talks in here just to make his effect easier to use every turn. And then we have a few cancels as well. Pharisia's Journey, being able to put something back into your hand. A couple of Dark Lords to be able to wipe the board, which is pretty nice. And then, of course, you have your anti-magics. I personally really like the number 13 anti-magic in this deck because you can ramp pretty quickly, depending on what you're doing here. And you can flip your Wolfgang and get a stone. So if you're doing it on turn 3 after you already have 3 stones, you're able to just have this free cancel, relatively cheap cancel, not free, cheap cancel in your hand to be able to stop anything your opponent wants to do. You're playing 4/6 Sage Stones. This card is probably the best stone ever printed in this game, so there's no reason not to. You're playing green-black because you want to be able to have access to your cancels when you need them. Plus, you want to be able to play Plains whenever you want, Plains of the Winds whenever you want, and then 2 Knowledge Stone rounds out the base. Although I would say, I wonder if he ever hit the Knowledge Stone when he wanted black for Residence. That's my only thing. I don't think it set him back too much, though. That's my only question for him. And then the sideboard is just spicy. Duet of Light. Gain a whole bunch of life. Just 2k. Battle comes to an end. Remove your opponent's stuff from the game so they can't kill you. Get rid of their Bahamut's, and all of a sudden you're in a much better place. Dispelling Stone, to be able to wipe Lycaons off the board and draw a card. Showdown with Ragnarok. Hose Ragnarok. Map Maker of the Demonic World. It's a Percival for Demonic World. Just look at the top 4, find a Demonic World, put it into your hand. It also gives all of your Demonic Worlds barrier, so there's no Dispelling Stone that can target them. That's really solid. A second Amadeus for board wipes. And then this other card. You probably have never used this card, although I am so happy he used it. This is, I think it's the True Black Ribbon. It's a 1-cost addition that gets added onto a Resonator. I think they just lose all abilities. That's fantastic. This card is fantastic. I love this card. I love this tech. I'm wondering what his specific uses for this card were, because it's just fantastic. Maybe against opposing Terminus, or I mean, I really just don't know like what else he would have used it for, but super spicy tech. I'm really glad to see. So let's talk a little bit about what we can expect to see. So this GP illustrates probably the best what kind of format we are leaving behind, right? We are going into a very mid-range format because of things like Belial, because of things like Astema, Acheron to tax your attacks. Kind of rhymes unintentionally. You're looking at things like Castle of Belial. The battle comes to an end with Carlina. Girion. I mean, there's so many incentives to not play cheap stuff, or there's just no reason to go fast right now, right? There's no way you're going to be able to just Turbulence, slam a Bahamut, go. Because if you see a Belial on your opponent's side of the field as their starting ruler, you're not going to be able to go forward and they just Godsart and stop all your attacks. So look at this GP as the end of an era, not as to what the meta is going to shape into. Things are going to change. Remember, Ragnarok just got a whole set of new cards. Ragnarok might come in. Olivia just got new cards. Violet got new cards that'll help her diversify her suite. Wolfgang got so many new cards. The 1-drop that gives him life for every demonic world that you have times 1,000. The demonic world that ramps you mana basically, and taxes Godsarts. We're gonna get into some really interesting gameplay, and feel free to experiment at this point. I think that's my only thought. Let me know what you guys think of this format coming up, the format that we're leaving. Any other comments you want about these GPs, any other comments about these decks, down in the comment section down below. But of course, guys, it's been a wonderful time going through these last GPs of the format with you. Looking forward to next time when we have a tournament report. It's going to be Bologna, I believe. So here we go. Till the next tournament report from Bologna. This has been Paul Reisman, signing off.